Welcome to ReelAbilities Film Festival. This is our beauty, self-advocacy, and disability conversation. We are so excited to have this today and to have you with us. I will start by going over just a few details about how to use this Q&A format and Zoom. So first of all, if you want to use the closed caption features, if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's actually a button that says closed captions. If you click show subtitles, you'll be able to see the conversation taking place in captions. In addition, we also have an Asl interpreter here with us today. His name is Brandon. The best way you could see Brandon is actually if you click on speaker view, and you can actually click his button and do pin video, and that will make him the center of the screen for you to be able to watch him. Or you can also leave him on gallery view and he will stay in the corner of the screen and he will stay on all of the time. Whatever you prefer, and you're welcome to switch back and forth between speaker view, gallery view, which will allow you to see the panelists and the audience today. So we're very excited to be able to share this with our entire community. So what we're going to have today is really a wonderful panel discussion that we've been planning for, I have to say, a few months now, along with my incredible co-planner here, but the person leading everything, Xian Horn. Xian, you want to say hi?
Hi, guys. So excited.
Thank you so much for being here, Xian. So Xian will introduce herself and the panel in a few seconds. We will have a panel discussion and conversation with our incredible panelists today. And right after, we will also open it to questions from you, our audience that is here with us. The way it would work is you can actually use the chat feature. If you click on the bottom of the screen, a chat will open up. We ask you to please not use this for any back and forth conversations, just in order to submit questions for our panelists. You're welcome to start submitting them throughout the panel, but at the end, we will actually write you a private message. I will be the one reaching out to you, asking you if you can be the next person to ask the question, and then we will actually unmute your mic and let you direct your question to the panelists live. Which is very exciting. So if you do have questions, please type them into the chat and I will reach out to you throughout the panel and let you know if you have an opportunity to ask it. I'm sorry that not everyone will get a chance to ask it, but we will do as best as we can because I'm sure we have a lot to discuss. So don't want to waste any more of your time. I'm gonna hand it off to Xian. Thank you, Xian.
Okay. Yay. Hi, everyone. My gosh, I feel so honored to have any time with you, and a difficult time for so many of us. And this is something we planned for coronavirus hit, but I thought, you know, I don't know if any of you have been to previous panels, they were more fashion focused, but I think we really wanted to bring it back to advocacy and self-esteem. My first love and how I started advocacy was actually through running workshops at NYU on self-esteem, and I realized how much that was purpose-driven in the end, really about taking action and what we can do, and everybody has something to contribute in the world. And so we really wanted to look at what work is being done in terms of representation and how are beauty standards changing. The thing is, it's very interesting, and I think we will go back to this. I mean, how important really are beauty standards when most of us are home alone. I know I was home for 3 weeks straight, just in my bedroom for 21 days. You know, at that point, I'm like, well, you know, how much does it matter what other people think or what we're creating? You know, I think there's going to be an interesting conversation going forward about what's next for our culture as a whole. But I am so thrilled to be with these powerhouse women that took time out of their day. I know at least 2 of them are mothers. So, I mean, that's not easy to do, especially I'm sure all the kids are home right now. But I just kind of want to start with how I know each of these amazing women. And then we'll get into the nitty gritty and we'll get into more of their accomplishments and things like that when we get to their advocacy as well. Okay, so I think since I'm seeing Jaleesa, I'm going to start with her. Jaleesa Graham, first of all, we actually catwalked together for something called Design for Disability. And she is such a beautiful person inside and out. She's a foster mom, and we just connected right away. I mean, anyway, so I just felt an instant sisterhood with her, and I think she's such a great example of, I don't know, compassion, love, and also fierceness. She's amazing on the runway, and she's in print too. She's a bona fide model and actress. So if anyone has seen it's the Disability Film Challenge every year that Nick Novicki heads. She was also, I believe, in a film that won 1 year. What year was that, Jaleesa? Do you know?
Yes, that was last year, Xian.
Oh my God! Okay, my sense of time is really, but yes, it feels like a lifetime ago, just because a lot has happened in a year, and I feel like your career, your life has really blossomed. So we'll get into more of that later. But anyway, Jaleesa's my girl, and thank you so much for being a part of this. And yeah, and we'll talk more about this. But she was also on the season finale of Project Runway. There's a lot of Project Runway connections in this group. Camilla also was season 3 superstar model. So we'll get more into that. But love you, Jaleesa. And now I think it's a perfect time to actually talk more about Camilla. Camilla, first of all, I was really moved by Camilla because when I met her, she was actually co-hosting the United Cerebral Palsy at the time. Now it's Adapt Community Network. She was actually hosting their gala, which was called the Santa Project. And we can talk a little more about that. And I know that she does a lot for the Chamber of Commerce of Africa. So anyway, these are such accomplished women. I'm so thrilled. And Amanda is actually my most recent friend, but I feel an instant kinship with her because she's also very committed to beauty advocacy and self-esteem. And she has her own initiative called Find Your Beautiful. And it's actually a podcast. And we met because we're both part of something called Link 20, which actually has a program at MIT. And we met at a meeting where she was just very eloquent and incredibly smart and poised. And I just thought she needs to be a part of this. And, I think in terms of, this question of what does beauty look like going forward, I think you're actually the perfect person to start with that. So Amanda, if you don't mind, or do you want to be called Mandy? Because I see Mandy, which do you prefer?
Either one is fine. Mandy's kind of my podcast, my online presence. So either one is fine.
So yeah, I mean, I'm curious. Do you think that first of all, self-esteem for people with disabilities, what made you interested in starting Find Your Beautiful? Let's start there.
Sure. Yeah, it was kind of a long journey that started off as one thing and totally changed into something else. About 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago now, I was actually leaving a full-time job and I was looking for another job. I had a 6-month-old baby at the time, and finding work for people with disabilities even still can be a challenge, as I'm sure many people here know. And I actually got into the direct sales business and was really struggling there. And my mentor at the time was just like, you really need to share your story. And for a long time, I tried to not include disability in my story. I think there was a point where it wasn't so much that I didn't accept disability, but it was more that I constantly felt this need to help others see past my disability. And when she said, share your story, that's really when things started to change for me personally. And I really started not only embracing disability for myself, but also wanting people to recognize disability as part of my own identity. And when that happened, I really felt this push to also help other people do the same. So that's kind of where the podcast came out of. My Find Your Beautiful podcast was really wanting to share my story, to let people know that like we're real, we're here. these are the struggles that we're dealing with, and this is how we can walk through those struggles together. So that's kind of how that journey happened for me.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. And what do you think, was the denial process, was it like a stripping away slowly, or was it kind of like rip the Band-Aid off and here I am? Like, what was that like for you?
It was definitely a slower process. Like I said, I think there was this kind of division within myself of one really being part of the community, wanting to be involved with the community, and being an advocate, but also, with certain groups of people or in certain situations, feeling this pressure almost to not identify with the community or to constantly be trying to prove myself beyond limitation. And so there was really just this kind of duality within me, and realizing that disability is part of my identity, and meeting amazing people who really helped me to embrace that, I think is what the changing point was for me. And it definitely was something that happened over time.
Yeah, I think, tell me what you think of this, but I think part of it is when you have such a visible disability, it can feel like that's all you are to the outside world. Obviously, we know our inner self, and we're going to actually, I would love to delve into, because I think this is a time where the things that were external, we really have to look inward at this moment. I think for so many people that are usually too busy to look inward. But I think, I can say that for me, I think, walking around with 2 ski poles, I'm like, okay, yes, I love this, but this is not all that I am. So then there becomes this need to kind of focus on everything else, because that's sort of the obvious thing. I mean, and I would love if anyone is on this chat, has any comments or feelings about that. We'd love to hear from you. But yeah, I'm curious, what do you think, coronavirus is doing to self-esteem or identity or beauty standards, Amanda? And then we will open up to Jaleesa and Camilla too. Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely changing. I think, I've had a number of meetings through Zoom and other virtual platforms. And one of the first things I think I hear people say regularly is, this is a judgment-free zone. So if you have kids, if you're in your pajamas, if you have no makeup on, whatever it may be, that's okay, because it's a judgment-free zone. And my hope is that we're able to move that kind of attitude into our, beyond our screens once this is all over, where, every zone that we're in should be that judgment-free zone. So I definitely think it's a lesson to be taken out of all of this.
That's amazing and beautifully said. Ladies, Camilla, would you like to, is there anything you're noticing as well about this period of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could say that, we kind of are in a time where nobody knows what's going to happen after, and I've been having conversations with some of the big players in this industry, in fashion and beauty, that are kind of stuck. It's a time where, I was talking to some journalists and fashion journalists, writers, and they don't know what to write. They're like, do we continue writing what we've been writing, or is this insensitive? What is going to happen after? And, I've been in the industry for almost 20 years, very, very veteran in the industry, but I've never seen a time like this. I could say I've also been on the cusp of trying to effect change in the industry in terms of advocacy for disabilities, sustainability, just inclusion of a more holistic narrative of the industry. And I think this is also a time that really the disabilities community, the people that have not been included, can really step up to the plate and harness some opportunities actually at this time. That's what I'm saying.
Can you give us a few examples of maybe some opportunities? I like that idea.
I mean, in terms of this community having so much empathy, first of all, being very progressive, and actually having, I would say the fashion community is not really a community per se, it's a business community. Everybody's for profit. So we're seeing a change where it's no more just profit over people, and the disabilities community and other communities that have not been included have the people message already developed, and they have a very strong infrastructure around the message. And this is the time that maybe they can actually lead the way, you know?
Yeah, actually, that makes me think of something you mentioned in your podcast, Amanda, and then I want to go to Jaleesa for a second. But you mentioned something that I think was really interesting, that you looked up body positivity and you only saw one person with a disability represented, that it was mostly plus size women or women of other ages. So I'm curious, you know, in terms of, you know, I would love to hear from Jaleesa. Do you think that body positivity has now evolved to a place where we're including more people with disabilities, and what does it take for that to happen more and more of these opportunities that Camilla?
Yes, I think it's a change. I think it's happening slowly. As you said, like actually a lot of like the jobs I do, the modeling things, most of the times I am like the only model with a disability, or I'm like the only actress on the set with a disability, or even in auditions, I'm the only one there with a disability. I think overall we have to have people with disabilities just seen as more normal, you know what I mean? Not, we're special in our own way, but also there's a lot of people with disabilities and we make up a big part of the population. So a lot of times when I go on auditions, I wonder like, why aren't there more people, you know, like with auditions? Like I'm a mom, I have a disability, and like you said, it doesn't make up all of who I am. Like I have a disability, but I'm a mother also. I'm a foster mom. I act, I model, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, you know, so I think we all connect more on like a human level, more than anything. So I just think if we were seen and more normalized, you know what I mean? And that's why including us and having diversity is so important. I know like growing up, I never saw myself like in ads or anything, you know what I mean? So I think also it's important for children with disabilities to see people that look like them doing things that they want to do. It's so important. Representation is like so important.
Yeah. So actually that reminds me, because I was watching Project Runway, the finale. My mom, you know, she's in the fashion industry her whole life. And so she loves to watch it every season. And so I'm just watching the end of it with her, and there you are. And I was like, I think that's my friend Jaleesa. And then I go, and I'm like, that really is my friend. And my mom had met you, and she's like, yeah, you're right. But I loved that because it wasn't like a big banner announcement. You were just one of the models. And so I had to be like, is that her? I think it is, you know what I mean? But I love that. I thought that was a very inclusive way to do it. It wasn't like, oh, this is the episode where all the people with disabilities, will just shove them all in one, you know what I mean? But I would love to hear a little bit, you know, I wanted to ask you this anyway. How did that come about? How did you get connected with Project Runway? Like for you, behind the scenes info we want.
No, the dirt, no. I want to agree with you. I love how I was just a model, you know what I mean? I wasn't like the token model with a disability. I was just a model that happened to have a disability. So that was really important to me. I just got an audition for it. And I remember years ago reaching out to the show and wanting to audition and be a model. And it didn't work out, but fast forward, I basically just auditioned for it. And I remember there were a lot of models there that were diverse. And I remember being nervous. I didn't have the right outfit. I didn't have heels. Like another model actually let me borrow her heels for me to walk. And I was like nervous. I wasn't going to go, honestly. I wasn't going to go to the audition, but I made myself go. And it was just a walk, you know, we walked, and then I heard back, I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 days back there, and I heard back that they wanted to put me like on hold. So it's like, maybe we'll use you, we'll pencil you in. And then I got the call that I was definitely going to be used. So I was like really excited. It was actually 3 days of work, 3 days of filming. It was very fun. A lot of the models had actually worked like throughout the season, so they kind of helped me along the way. But all the designers were great. All the models were great. It was so fun. It was so hard to like hold in the secret and not tell anybody that I was going to be on it until it aired. But I was nervous. I was so nervous. I didn't look it though. But it was really fun experience. I met a lot of models too. But I would say I think that they had a lot of models that were diverse. Like a lot of the models that they used were very diverse. So I was happy to see that. But it was very fun. It was exciting. The hardest part was to not tell anyone that I was going to be on it.
And I mean, actually, this season was very diverse because I think they had Paralympians also in another episode. And it's, I mean, and I think this is where the future was headed, I mean, before coronavirus, but I am curious, like, what advocacy is going to look like going forward. And I also was wondering, you guys, you know, Camilla, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, you know, trying to figure out what's appropriate right now. So for example, I was advocating for transportation. You know, obviously there's not much in the way of transportation happening now because there's nothing to go to, right? We're all very insular right at this moment. I'm curious, what are some things that you are passionate about that you don't want to see get swept under the rug from, you know, obviously what we are dealing with now? And obviously survival is paramount, but what are some of the things that you want to get back to, or you hope that the world does not forget while we're focused on this?
You know, in my end, actually, I actually was following what was happening in the industry in terms of appropriation and cultural. There's a big cultural appropriation issue. I'm sure you've all been following what the big brands were doing, you know, for so many years, and in terms of disabilities, in terms of people of color, women, transgender, LGBT community. You know, like I said, it's kind of like a gray area, but you know, actually for me, I'm very excited about this kind of new beginning. It's really unfortunate that we're going through this in New York. You know, so many people have died and everything. There's going to be a different way of messaging. I think that really the consumerism is going to change as well. You know, so for me, what I think that I want to see change is more empathy in the industry, just really more authenticity in the projection of everybody in this diversity message, and not so much the superficiality sometimes, like you said, where they just kind of tokenize somebody or put somebody on the cover just to do business. I want the message to go deeper, like, what is the story of this person that you've put on the cover? Like, what else are you doing with them? Like the longevity and just like the deepness of the message versus, you know, just checking off a box, you know, for their business. That's what I hope I can see.
Do you think that in this time of introspection that, I mean, do you think that we will go deeper? Anyone can answer this that wants to. I am curious to see if we take the lessons that we learn at this time and really, really run with them, or run in quotes, but yeah. Yeah, any thoughts, guys?
I mean, I could say that, you know, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't really wait to ask for permission to do things. I just do them. I think we shouldn't wait for the industry to go deeper. I think every community should start putting out a message of demanding this going deeper. You know, like you said, everybody, this is actually one of the first things that's really united the whole world. Like everyone in the world has been impacted by this in some way, whether they don't have the coronavirus or know some people. We are all on lockdown, you know, and the world is stopped, you know. So how can we, especially, I love that this panel is all women. I gotta throw that in there. I think that I have this theory in my mind, and maybe I'm fantasizing, that we've all been praying for women to take over. And I actually think that that's gonna happen right after this. So I'm ready. Information, ready to go.
Well, you know what? Not only are we all women, as I was preparing for this, I realized, and we had not planned it this way, but we're all women of color as well. And I think, yeah, it's so wonderful that that happened naturally too. And I think it says that there is work for all of us to do towards inclusion. And I think, you know, I just want to commend you, Camilla, because one of the reasons I wanted you on the panel is that you are an ally. You're a humanist. And, you know, I think it really does take the more, you know, you have, you know, modeled in a more traditional sense. You've seen the industry, you've seen the business side, and to have somebody like you advocating on behalf of others is so powerful. I would love to kind of talk more about your advocacy with the Chamber of Commerce, also your role as a creative officer. Do you think, I would love to hear more about that as well.
Yeah, actually, yeah, thank you so much. Actually, I actually wanted to go, I was just thinking just now, when we're talking about Amanda's podcast and everything, and, people think models are these superhuman, like we have no self-esteem issues. And Jaleesa just mentioned, you get scared at castings. Everybody gets scared at castings, whether you have a disability or not. And I feel like there's this movement within this disabilities movement, this inclusion movement, where they're doing the work. And you actually have a whole, I would say, the traditional models that are not doing the work and they are still stuck there. And I feel like this is even the time for leadership to come from the people that have not been included, right? And that's kind of what I want to touch on. And then in terms of your question, in terms of the Chamber of Commerce in Africa, this is also a time where Africa has really not been included in a lot. Like, I don't know if you guys are reading that the French want to test the vaccine on Africans. It's a big situation. What? And, we are 1 billion people on the continent, 70%, or under 30. But then the disabilities community, almost negligible, nothing, no one knows what's really going on, right? So for me, my role is, by my advocacy here in the United States and being an ally of the disabilities community via ADOPT Community Network, how can we then extend and bridge those communities together? So that's what I'm looking at.
Thank you for doing that. That's incredible. And if there's anything we can do to support you, I know that we're all on the same page here, and sisters must lift each other up. So this is great. And, it makes me think also, Jaleesa, of your, being a foster mom, and obviously often orphans also get, thrown to the wayside a lot of times. Or I know that I went to an orphanage in China that it was all kids with disabilities, because unfortunately China has all these standards of perfection that do not include disability. And so a lot of parents think it's okay to just abandon a child if it's not quote unquote perfect. And I loved, Amanda, one of your podcasts, you actually talk about, from a spiritual perspective, she actually looks at the possibility that God actually sees the disabled body as more perfect than a flawless body. If anyone wants to check that out, you've got to go to her podcast. I was blown away by all of it. It's very deep. It goes there, and I really appreciate that. But I would love, Jaleesa, for you to maybe talk a little bit about how being a foster mom has changed you, or what it, does it feed into your work with inclusion? I know that your son was on a Huggies. Isn't he on the current Huggies box right now? It's just amazing. It's just amazing to see the different forms of inclusion, But yeah, Jaleesa?
Yeah. Oh yes, my baby. He's on the Pampers. I'm more.
Sorry, wrong brand.
Yeah, he is. He was my first foster son. He's 4 now, and we adopted him last year. It's almost been a year. On April 12th, it'll be a year that we adopted him. But I think I see fostering has definitely changed me. I was in the foster care system. I'm sorry, the sun is like going. I was in the foster care system, so I think that's part of why I wanted to become a foster parent. I just think overall it's a great thing to do, to give a child a home, when they need it. Give them love, do great things with them while they're transitioning to go back home. With my son, it ended up that he didn't get to go back home, but I got to adopt him. And I also have a 9-month-old foster son now, and my 7-year-old, his birthday's tomorrow. He'll be 8 tomorrow. So they're in the back. But I feel that with like older foster kids, I've fostered a few teenagers, and they don't get fostered a lot. It's a lot of like the babies, because you know everyone wants like a baby. But I've had some great teenagers that I still have relationships with today. I think it's a lot of stereotypes that we have to get over. I've had a lot of great teens that are just like great kids that just want love, you know, that just are in sports, and they just had you know, a difficult upbringing, but they're great kids. So it's opened up my eyes also to be grateful for a lot of things, because a lot of the young kids I've had experience so much. Like I've had some young kids that like hide food in the house because they're, you know, at their home, they're not used to getting food, you know, so it's a lot of like, they need a lot of love, you know what I mean, to undo some of the things that they've been through. But it's a lot of work, but I wouldn't change it for anything. I think it's just made me grateful. I think it's made my biological, my 7-year-old, also aware. I think it's been good for him to see how fortunate he is actually, and see and open up his mind to being helpful. He's very like helpful now with when we get babies and when we get other foster kids in the home. So I think it's made him more of a gentle, loving person. I think overall, everyone should foster at least one child in their life and experience it, because it's life-changing.
Well, thank you. That's so touching. And I've got to tell you, one of the hardest things for me going to China was finding out they gave me the oldest kids, I guess, because they probably figured it would be hard for me to change diapers and things like that. But they gave me the oldest kids that were 12 and 13. And what I found out is that after the age of 12 in China, kids are not adoptable. They're on their own. So they were not interested in the beginning in me at all, because they're like, well, you know, we'll never see you again, and you know, we're not adoptable anyway, you know. So there was this heartbreaking thing where I really had to say, no, I'm here for you and I care for you, and realizing that so much of this issue is cultural. And the fact is, again, these were all kids with disabilities and these oldest kids knew that the only way they could fend for themselves was in education. So it definitely had an impact on me, but it made me I definitely would love to adopt one day. Just putting that out there, but not to get, but yes, I think we should all at least foster if we can. You know, obviously not everybody has the resources to do it, but if you can. Well, I would love to, maybe we could end with two things. One is, what does the future of beauty or advocacy or compassion or action look like to each of you? And then also, maybe I thought it would be good to maybe do like one mental health kind of, you know, hack that you use for yourself that helps you through times of isolation, or, you know, since I think probably all of us are going through a lot right now, I thought maybe it would be good to kind of leave our wonderful audience, before we get into questions, with some kind of tip, you know, something that we can take forward with us. Amanda, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So just as far as your question about the future of beauty and self-advocacy and all of that, I think that we just really need to move away from this idea of standardizing everything. And we are in such a mindset constantly in employment and laws and just so many different areas of our lives where we're trying to standardize things. You know, in education, you talk about standardized testing and all of that. And beauty, whether inside, outward, you're making your own beautiful life, it really needs to not be standardized. Everyone is going to be on their own journey and on their own path. And I think that when we can really accept that and really embrace that, we will all start to really find our beautiful. So that's where I see the future kind of going with that. As far as a mental health hack, for me, it's always been music. I love music. I love singing. I love writing music. I love listening to music. So I think anytime that I can be, you know, surrounded by something musical, I'm in a happier place. I think music also just kind of transcends different cultures, all the barriers that we think of with things like language and communication. I think music has the power to really transcend. So definitely blast your radios, your CDs. Definitely been throwing on some of the old school 90s music. So all of that. So that would be my hack for everyone is play a good song.
I'm hanging out with you for sure. Perfect. Okay. How about you, Camilla?
Yeah, so I was gonna say like we should hang out again, Jean, like when we hang out at that premiere and we got grooving and your
We got moves.
were moving, yeah. Yeah, so for me, what do I see? I see it's like a sweater and you have this little string that's been pulled in the fashion industry. I'm looking from a business perspective because I'm actually working on a fashion project and we can't go back, right? So for me, I feel like there's going to be people who are hiring diversity and inclusion executives, C-suite, multicultural, checking boxes and hiring these very expensive people. We also know there's going to be a huge loss of jobs, right? Socioeconomic impact is going to be really, already the fashion industry was in disarray, being disrupted. I think there's going to be a new message, something more deeper, like I said, more empathy within this message of inclusion versus, just people trying to go about their business. It's not the same. Everything, it was already tilting. Now it's completely over on its head. Like you, I just want to see what's going to happen. I'm very actually excited about it. If you're 20 years in this business, you're like, what, when is it going to ever change, right? So for me, how I'm managing self-isolation, I'm kind of weirdly enough, you'll never believe it, I'm kind of introverted and used to self-isolating in my work, but it's on my terms. So it's been challenging when it's not on your terms, right? So what's been interesting for me is I got into my creative spirit and collaboration. I actually just launched a campaign in Africa for the women to come together and tap into our intangible culture heritage and start using our herbals while we wait for the global vaccine. So that's been very uplifting for me to feel like I'm doing something, so that's how I've been managing this whole process.
Wonderful. That's great. What about you, Jaleesa?
Yeah, so I don't know, I think moving forward, I've actually used this quarantine time to kind of like look deeper, as a lot of you have said. Like, honestly, I think when you do so much, when you're advocating, whether you're a parent or whatever, I feel like sometimes you can lose yourself. And I feel like alone time is good a lot, this time to kind of remember who I am and the things I like, especially having a lot of little kids, I always think of them. So kind of just taking time to think of myself. I think moving forward, we need to just focus on what matters and what's important. I think you can take a positive out of, stores and things being closed down. Because now you have to like sit with yourself and, figure out who you are and take time to figure out what really is beautiful. It's not always looks, it's not always makeup in the exterior. It's really the person that you are. There's been like so many acts of kindness and so many great things that people have been doing in this time. People looking out for neighbors and the elderly and things like that. One thing I do, what I've started doing that now that I have the time, because I'm usually like on the go, but now that I've been home, I've been doing more yoga, I've been doing meditating, I've been kind of slowing down because I'm used to always being on the run and being on the go. So I've used this time to just kind of relax, which I think I've really needed.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big time prayer warrior in general. I just find that really helps me, but I also think that one of the things that I always say in my self-esteem classes that I think applies to this situation, because I'm thinking about the people that are worried about their finances, that are thinking like, what's next? And it is easy to think that the world is over. It is not. I think it's really important. Like I guess my hack to share with the world is I hope that we all look at the bigger picture, that at one's lowest point, it can be the springboard to a new creativity, a new type of maybe some kind of work that you weren't expecting. And I would just say, please allow yourself the time to make sure we don't give up. We can't give up on each other and we can't give up on ourselves. So, and I would say in terms of beauty, I hope that someone mentioned empathy earlier. You know, I think, for example, with transportation, I hope now everyone understands what it's like to be isolated, and maybe there's more compassion for that. Or that we realize more what it is to, you know, those that were sick for a long time may have some idea about healthcare. Or so I think this is an opportunity for a lot of standards to change. And I think beauty right now is a very inward thing that we're experiencing. We have to find beauty within ourselves or create beauty when it's not being, we're not consuming it all the time, right? So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can create as individuals and collectively. And I think, I don't know, what do you guys think? Are you guys ready for questions? Do you think this is a good time for it? Okay, so, all right, Yara, let me have them. Let me at them.
Hi, I'll come back here. So I actually have the first audience question, which is more of a request that we received from the beginning of the panel, which is, can each panelist describe themselves visually for audiences with low vision?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, of course. Oh my goodness.
No problem.
I wish you had mentioned that earlier. Okay. I guess I'll start. I'm seated at the moment. I normally walk with 2 ski poles, but I'm just a half Asian girl with long brown hair and ridiculous smile sometimes. Yes, and ladies, Amanda, maybe next.
Sure. I am also sitting down wearing a pink shirt. Pink's my favorite color. I have about shoulder length, a little longer than shoulder length, brown curly hair. I'm wearing glasses and fair skin.
I am Jaleesa. I have long braids. I'm sitting down as well, and I have a light peach shirt on, and I have glasses.
Hi, I'm Camilla. I'm Black, African American, African, whatever you want to call that. And I'm 6 feet tall. I have a curly afro hair, and I'm wearing this ridiculous hat that my friends have been telling me to take off for a few months, but I just love it so much. So
I love it.
Thank you so much. So we have a second audience question, and I'm going to let her ask it herself, from Chandra. And I'm going to ask each of the people who also are asking questions, if you would like to describe yourselves visually, please do. If you do not feel comfortable doing that, you do not need to. So Chandra, I'm unmuting your mic.
My name is Chandra. I use she, her pronoun, and I am white and Latina. I have curly hair that's up in a ponytail, and I'm wearing a pink tank top. I really enjoyed this panel. Thank you guys so much. I loved all of your comments. One question I wanted to ask is, so I'm deaf and have anxiety, and then I'm also been fat. I've been fat my whole life. And I've worked really hard on body positivity and high self-esteem. And so I like my body and how I look. But one thing that's been interesting is with the stay home directive, I've definitely noticed myself gaining a little bit of weight. And I'm finding this tension between, I'm body positive, it doesn't matter, like, you know, but also when this ends, the world is still the same in terms of how it treats fat people, and especially fat women, and especially fat disabled women. And so I was wondering if that's anything the panelists have been thinking about, and how, you know, or if you have any advice on how to kind of hold those two tensions.
Anyone want to take that? I have a lot of comments.
But oh, yeah. I do too. Yeah, for sure. I have a lot of comments on that. So I guess my answer is kind of twofold. First and foremost is, you know, at the end of the day, as I'm sure you already have expressed, that you have a sense of positivity and confidence in yourself. And I think ultimately that's really all that is going to matter at the end of the day. So if you are feeling good about yourself, then that's really the most important thing. However, I also work for a nonprofit organization.
Oh, we forgot to mention Keen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so it is called Keen New York, and we provide exercise and fitness to young people with disabilities. So there are a lot of virtual options happening right now. My organization is providing virtual opportunities for kids to get exercise, but there are a lot of fitness videos that are happening. People are, doing a lot of things for free right now as well. So it's really a great time to work on any health and fitness goals that you might have. But yeah, I think, my whole motto of Find Your Beautiful is really being your best self and finding the best version of yourself. And that's obviously includes your outward appearance. And if so, when you look at yourself, if you're not happy with what you see, then taking steps to change that because you want to, I think is important. But if you look at yourself and, you're totally happy with the person you see looking back at you, then you should keep your head up and not really care what anyone else has to say.
Yeah, that's great. Love it. Can I also piggyback on that too? I think, what Amanda's talking about is, I think self-care and having the ability to choose, the moment where you're like, okay, I'm happy with my body now, but maybe, I want to change this is really important. I think for me, I actually just wrote an article for Ariana Huffington's Thrive Global called How Gaining 25 Pounds Improved My Self-Esteem. And basically, I was on the wrong medication and I gained 25 pounds in 2.5 months. So I went from a size 2 to a size 10 virtually overnight. And what I realized when my body was changing much faster than I could even process was that I had to make the decision to love my body because it was mine, not because it was perfect. That doesn't mean we don't work on the things we want to improve, but I think it's really important to recognize that we only got one body, and that body is a gift to us, whether it's, in our own mind, perfect or not, it's ours. And so there was some freedom in choosing to love my body. It was, my body was much less stereotypical than what it had been before, but I was much more insecure when I was a size 2 than when I was a size 10. So I think that's a really important question right now when we don't know, like we're, snacking all day and, there's not as much. I know when I was, I'm up in upstate right now, but for 3 weeks I was in New York and I was in my bed for 3 weeks. I mean, I didn't have anywhere to go. So, this is a situation where a lot of this is not someone's choice or anyone's fault. So I think it's just important to choose to love yourself, love your body, and where you can, make the changes you can, but also practice some self-love and forgiveness. Yeah, so that's my 2 cents. Yeah, great question. Thank you so much, Chandra. And if there's any way that we can support you going forward, I can speak for myself. I would love to keep in touch with everyone. I have a feeling that these ladies would also. So we'd love to support you going forward as well.
Thank you. And our next question is from Luis Alvarez. So I'm going to open your mic now.
Hello, I'm Lewis, but I go by Junior. I'm a student at Bronx Community College, and I'm part of CCSD, Community Coalitions for Students with Disabilities. And we work a lot with the Disability Office. And I wanted to know, how could we show students with disabilities that they're beautiful no matter how they look, no matter what their mental status is on? It just, how do we promote self-love on times and realities where social norms tell us that we're less than desirable?
Great question. Anybody want to? I have some thoughts, but I want to, again, anyone want to take it?
I think, all right, so I don't know. I think one thing that has helped me is I've worked very hard now to not compare myself to other people. I think that was greatly damaging my self-esteem. I know that when I would look in the mirror, I would be happy, but then compared to, like another, then I wouldn't. So I think that's an important thing to not, and especially these days with social media, we can look at, you know, so many different people and so many, you know, as society tells us, okay, this right here is beautiful. I think you have to sometimes unplug and not focus on other people so much, and kind of also love yourself, but stop comparing yourself. You have to, you know, accept yourself and accept your body, and like you said, work towards being your best self, not trying to be like anyone else. I don't know, that's helped me.
I wanted to add a little something as well, from something that I've been thinking about a lot, is that, you know, we kind of sometimes focus on our physical body so much, where it's how do I look, how do other people look, Instagram, you're going nuts, you can't keep up. And I think that with this coronavirus, something that really has come to me, I have actually a science background, is our physiology, our inside of our body, our immunity, right? And right now, there's no medication for this disease, COVID-19. It's really our bodies fighting for us. So I think there's gonna be like a whole new appreciation for the inside of your body, your immunity, your wellness, your health, versus not always being focused on the aesthetic and the outside so much, you know? I think that that's something that's gonna really come at play. We have seen a lot of people going into veganism and juicing, and it's gonna be a whole new appreciation for what's happening inside. And, you know, is it worth it to diet, or do you wanna be healthy? You know, that's kind of where I think this is gonna go.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, I was going to wait till all the panelists had spoken, but I did want to say one thing to Luis, who I actually know. Great to not exactly see you. Right now you're the black box, but he's a very tall guy, and you stand out immediately, Luis. And I would say, I think one of the things that is really important to remember is that we can create our own content in this time, right? There's YouTube, there's many ways for us to create, rather than looking at what standards are out there and how we're defined by others. I think, you know, kind of going along with what Jaleesa was saying, it's really important to realize that you can create your own standard and go by that. You know, I think we get into trouble when we give too much power to the external forces or ideas. So I think it's important, you know, and when you create content, then you're also creating representation for yourself and others, if that makes sense. So love you very much, and thank you for the question.
We have a next question from Emily Liu.
Hi. Can you all hear me?
Hello, Emily.
Okay, awesome. Hi, sorry, I tried to unmute myself, and I think I like undid Yara's unmute, so my bad. But hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I use she, her pronouns. I am a 5'2", half Chinese, half Taiwanese girl. And I currently have pink hair, and actually the reason that I am not on video right now is because I have pink dye in my hair and a plastic bag on my head, so I kind of look a mess right now. But I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited and inspired by the conversations that we're having today. And my question for the panelists is, if you could, I think we've already touched on this a little bit, but if you all could go a little more in depth about the kinds of experiences or self-reflection that you all have done that have helped you become advocates for yourselves and become the bright, beautiful, confident beings that you are today.
Wow, that's a beautiful question. Who wants to take that? It's a good one. Wow. How about Amanda? You want to start us off?
Sure. Well, thank you for the compliments in your question. You know, I think for me, I found it easier to always advocate for other people. And I think that's really where things started for me, was seeing injustices being done to others. And whether that was in the disability space, the sexual orientation space, whatever it may be. And that that level of anger kind of fueled me to want to advocate for other people. And then myself being a part of the community, being a woman, being Latina, being a Christian, kind of having all these, you know, things that traditionally would be stacked against a person, is what really made me become a self-advocate. And then I will say having children absolutely changes your life. You go into, for me, it's the mama bear mode, and you know, you just are always ready to pounce on anyone who is wanting to interrupt you know, your sense of harmony and your sense of well-being. And you know, as a disabled parent, I want my kids to grow up in a place that is a judgment-free zone. I want my kids to grow up in a place where beauty is not something that is standard, where they're not trying to meet someone else's standard, but that they themselves have a high standard for themselves and are striving towards that. So my fuel is really in wanting to help the world be better for others, which thankfully makes the world a better place for me.
Anyone else want to take the question? Great.
Yeah, I think one thing that fuels me, so my disability, I don't know if they know our disability, but I have a limb difference. So I was born without the lower half of my right arm. And I remember one time I met, I've met a little girl that had a limb difference, and she was like so excited to meet me. I don't think she had ever met anyone with a limb difference before, and her mother was like so excited to meet me. And I think that just helped me to realize how important representation is. And it just helped me to think, you know, and really motivated me to want to become the role model that I didn't have as a child growing up. So that's definitely something that helped me.
Yeah, I mean, I was even excited, Emily, that you're half Asian, because I don't meet that many halflings in the world. And I, you know, obviously if Camilla wants to take this, I want to give her some time to do so. But I just want to say that I think it's really important that I think everybody, I think need is something that really fueled me to become an advocate. This was not my plan. I thought living my life as happily as possible was the best that I could do. I considered my disability the blessing of my life because I grew up an only child. I was in a bubble like this, where I was very protected, and I had the support system that I needed. And I realized that when I met other much more brilliant people than I could ever be. I was in a theater where these were actor studio actors, Kennedy Center award-winning playwrights, writing about their bodies, whether they had disabilities or not. And I realized these are the most talented people I've ever met. This is how they're doing. How's everybody else doing? And it really fueled me, especially around disability, because I got to hear some stories, and even a few people shared suicide attempts. And only because they felt so uncomfortable in their own skin or uncomfortable with disability. And it really, it broke me for the time, but in a way that galvanized me to say, okay, what can we do about this? How can I be the love and support that I got so that this doesn't happen to any other child or any other person with a disability? So I think, you know, in terms of what fuels you, it's usually a need. And I think, you know, I'm so grateful that it led me to all this other stuff. I didn't think that it would lead me to assistive technology or fashion or cultural representation, but that's what ended up happening. And I think the most important thing is to figure out what we can do from our different spaces. Not everybody's going to do the same type of advocacy, but everybody has some kind of, even if it's advocating for your own family, right? We all have something that we can do. So yeah, I think Yara told me we have one more time for one more question. So can't wait.
Yeah, so I was actually just trying to see if JD would like to ask a question, and I don't know if they're available.
Oh,
oh, here we go.
Sir Michael.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
I wish we could see you
Hi.
too. We'll take it.
I am an African American male. I was not going to turn on my camera because I apparently have a halo made of pipe cleaners on my head that my daughter put on earlier today, and apparently I forgot about it until my wife feverishly pointed at me about it. I wanted to ask, my daughter put this on. I have a 8-year-old daughter, and my question is the fact that we do a great deal. Well, we've done a great deal of home learning recently, and so a lot of this stuff is vocabulary. And so every day we have a vocabulary word, and one of the words that came up was gorgeous. And so defining beauty for my daughter is something that is both a philosophy and also pretty much an actual thing we're doing right now when we're defining words. So how would you guys define beautiful for my daughter, and what would you recommend for her to see or look at or read to help her foster a healthy and more modern sense of beauty?
Wow, great question.
I'm just putting the education of my daughter in your hands, so go ahead. That's fine.
No pressure. We need another hour. Sorry, Yara.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll start. So, my concept of beauty has definitely changed over time. And so the way that I view beauty is as an individual journey and the thing that makes you feel like the best version of you, on the outside and the inside, whatever that means for you. And just as far as your question as to what kinds of things, to be introducing your daughter to, I think that your own interactions with the world, you as parents, your interaction with the world, whether it's with a diverse group of people, how you love yourselves, how you respect yourselves, the journey of beauty that you as parents are on, I think is going to be have the biggest impact on your daughter before she, even starts to absorb anything from the outside world. I think you're building a foundation for her. And so I would say, make sure that you're interacting the right way with the world and in a way that, has you on a beautiful journey for yourself.
Cool.
Anyone else want to take this? I've got some ideas.
Yeah, I think beauty is honestly being yourself. It's who you are. I think I felt a lot more beautiful when I accepted. I didn't always, include myself in the disability community for whatever reasons. And I think as I accepted myself and I was just true to myself, didn't try to be like someone else or hide parts of myself and just lived in my truth. I think that's beautiful. I think we're all so different, but I think, whenever I see someone and they have their own kind of style and they have their own kind of hairstyles, like your halo, whatever, you can rock it, when you see someone and they're different, and I might be like, what, I can't rock that as good as they rock it because it's just them, you know what I mean? So when you come in a room and you're just yourself, I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that confidence, goes, that energy goes to everyone else. I feel like I agree. It starts at home. I feel like telling her that she's beautiful and complimenting her. I think looking in the mirror every day and letting her pick things that she loves about herself, because the outside world will try to tell you what's beautiful, but if she knows inside of her, like, she's beautiful and what she loves about herself, and just instilling that kind of confidence in her before she goes out into the world. And I think that's all she needs.
I would love to continue this panel, but we actually have to prepare for the next one, which is coming up at 6. But I want to say really a huge thank you, first of all, to our incredible panelists, Camilla, Jaleesa, Amanda. This was so incredibly insightful and lovely listening to you and having you here with us. Xian, really a huge thank you to Xian. And I will let those of you who don't know that Xian has been a huge ReelAbilities supporter over the years and serves on our selection committee and our advisory committee, and is just a wonderful person who is doing incredible work. You should hear her conversation and talks that she does with a lot of different organizations, and brings so much of her knowledge, value, and beauty. So thank you so much, Xian, for putting all of this together.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say one thing that kind of also answers JD's question. Beauty is about action, ultimately. You can go to a dictionary, you can read about it, but I think I want to thank everybody for the actions that you're taking for your family and your friends, and the things you're doing to foster more beauty in your life. And just thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much to our panelists. And Yara, I couldn't do it without you. Love you.
Thank you so much. And I do
Bye,
just want to
everyone.
take this time to just say that this is a very hard time for everyone, and there are a lot of terrible things happening in the world right now. And I'm so glad that with this panel we were able to find some words of encouragement and things to focus on that will help us get through this. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support, and I hope that all of you do take care of yourselves and your families and each other. And please join us for our other events too. We have another panel at 6 o'clock about art, expressions through art, different artists working with different forms. We have a screening of Amy's Victory Dance this evening, and tomorrow is our closing night with incredible conversations with activist Judy Heumann, who we might have seen at the film Crip Camp, that's currently on Netflix. And we're going to close with an incredible film Bedlam, which is about mental health institutions in the US. So thank you again for being here, and I hope to see you at our other events. Bye.
Bye. Stay in touch, everyone.